FMAcademy. Today's presentation is the journey from FileMaker Pro to WebDirect. If you have any audio problems during the presentation, hopefully I'm actually on. Yeah, that might be audio problem number one, my voice. But if you have any audio problems, please try calling in. If you're using web audio, just try calling in instead. And of course, if you continue to have audio problems, please remember that we will be publishing the recording of this webinar online, so please don't fret. It will be available within the next couple of days for you to watch. In addition, the question and answer board is available, so please put your questions in. You don't have to wait till the end, obviously. Put them in throughout the course of the session. We are going to wait till the end to answer them, though, but please, by all means, ask as many and as often as you would like. Can you hit the next slide? So the FMAcademy is a consortium of leading FileMaker development companies in the U.S. All FMAcademy members are members of the FileMaker Business Alliance, and our purpose is simply to educate FileMaker users and developers, to encourage best practices, and to foster further adoption of the software. For our presenter today, we have Dr. Jerry Salem. So hit that next slide. Thank you, sir. Can we? All right. Jerry's been working with FileMaker for 25 plus years. He is certified in pretty much every version of the product.
Yeah, 9-ish through 16.
9 through 16. He is a PhD in biochemistry. He has skills with SQL Server, ODBC, FileMaker Web Publishing, FileMaker on the desktop, and on iPad and iPhone. He's been with IT Solutions for many years and has been a trainer and regularly trains on the FileMaker FTS and on other training materials. All right, Jerry, take it away.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mark. Can everybody hear me? I hope so. Raise your hand if you can't hear me. In today's talk, what I'd like to do is show you some of the things that I've learned over the past year or so in taking a regular FileMaker client-based solution into WebDirect. WebDirect has really been shaking things up in the FileMaker community for nearly 5 years. That's amazing. But it's only been recently, with the release of FileMaker 16, that the platform has become really meaningful in the business world. By the end of today's seminar, I hope you'll have a better understanding of some of the do's and don'ts when moving your existing FileMaker solution to WebDirect. So let's start with a survey of where the platform is now. In the dark days, before FileMaker 12, we had a different product entirely, and that was called Instant Web Publishing. It was really amazing for the time. When you turned it on, you could access most of your database in a browser. It even supported navigation script steps. The way I like to describe Instant Web Publishing, the previous incarnation, was if you had a particular problem that Instant Web Publishing could solve, then you were golden. If your solution required anything different than what Instant Web Publishing delivered, you'd be better served by building PHP solution and connecting that to your database. I had a couple of clients that actually fit this very tiny niche. But with FileMaker 13, the playing field definitely changed. With the introduction of WebDirect, FileMaker Inc. basically tossed out Instant Web Publishing and completely rewrote it using the new standards of the day. There was still that eye-popping moment where all you did was check off a button, and then on the server admin console, and your database just appeared in a browser. There were still some limitations, but compared to Instant Web Publishing, those things seemed trivial at the time. With WebDirect, you could actually show a dialog box in your database, and the layouts didn't flicker very much. It was really astounding. After a couple of months went by and the dust settled, we woke up, we opened our eyes, pick your metaphor, the limitations became a little bit more evident. The most telling one in my mind was in FileMaker 13, the way FileMaker Inc. described their own technology as being perfect for casual users. They themselves even said that it wasn't really ready for prime time. There was 50 users that were supported. With the introduction of FileMaker 14, they introduced a couple of very important user-based features. Those were button bars and placeholder text. In the banner features for the developer, for you and me, were the ability to pass parameters inside URLs to open the database and actually have WebDirect perform functions when it opened, and the ability to customize your homepage. The number of users that were supported in FileMaker 14 doubled to 100 users. Now it's really starting to gain some traction. With FileMaker 15, they added support for mobile browsers, so it became a viable alternative for using Android phones. It was pretty much just a performance update. They fixed a whole bunch of things. The ability to scroll through longer lists happened, and they also they didn't change the number of users that were supported. Last year, with the introduction of FileMaker 16, the big feature for, I think, most users was OAuth support. So now you could actually credential yourself against Google and some other platforms. The banner feature for most people is going to be saving records as PDF. This really changed the game. Now the solution is a full business solution. And of course, they've added support for multiple web servers, and they'll even support up to 500 simultaneous users if you have enough power behind it. It's interesting that FMI, FileMaker Inc., was willing to simply toss out the old instant web publishing and rebuild the technology. They weren't happy with the choice, and in addition, last year they realized they weren't happy with the choice of the PDF engine, so they tossed that out and they totally rebuilt that from scratch. I think that shows their commitment to the platform. They roll up their sleeves when they need to get the job done, just like their developers. They just get things done. So the takeaway from that history lesson is that the platform changes with time. Most changes are for the better. Some changes are just a refresh. And just like the platform, your solutions should evolve too. These changes will make things better for your users, and those are the people that you always have to keep in mind. While we're updating our solution that was originally tooled for client usage, here are a couple of things to keep in mind. Updating the user experience and the user interface will often give users a fresh view of your database. This has the side benefit of reinvigorating your users. I'd like to let them know that a change is coming. Usually, I'll send documentation around of images of before and what your database will be looking like soon. In addition, lately here at IT Solutions, we've been creating videos and sending those around to highlight the updates that the users will be seeing. This is all proactive. Tell your users things will change in the future. A lot of people like watching videos and find them more useful than just a PDF document. Another lesson I've learned over the past year is that simple is better. Solutions that strive to remain simple tend to last longer, they're easier to learn, and they're simpler to maintain over time. But simple doesn't mean simple-minded. Especially for complex problems, we work very hard to make the solution look simple. Often this can be achieved by thinking more about the process of what people do. Think about how they're using the database and the process from beginning to end. In the client version, we were able to just be more spread out. And the perfect example you'll see in a couple of minutes is just peppering layouts with fields without any regard to performance. And speaking of performance, WebDirect will force you to look at performance bottlenecks in your solution. And fixing these have the added benefit of fixing bottlenecks for all your users. WebDirect is not necessarily all or nothing. You will definitely have WebDirect users, and you'll continue to have some client users. So are we all excited? We're going to ditch our clients and move to the web. Let's go. So there's a couple things to watch for. Like most things in FileMaker, everything just works as expected. That's why we're using this rapid application development platform in the beginning. However, there are a couple notable gotchas to be aware of. These are the things I'm going to highlight in today's talk. Like I just mentioned, putting too many objects on a layout, watch for value lists and how your users will be interacting with them. Multiple windows are a problem, printing, email, and custom menus. So for a better WebDirect experience, you should use less objects on your layouts in general. If a user needs to see more things, take them to another layout. Just like when you're developing for iOS devices, you should make everything just a little bit bigger and add some padding around it to make it a little bit more visible. This is an example of an old solution that I worked on for a museum. This is a FileMaker view. This is the client view. There are a couple of things to notice here. The field headings, I'm pointing with my finger, sorry. The field headings are all in bold. To me, that emphasizes the names of the field and not the data. There's a lot of extra buttons that don't need to be here. For example, here we're looking at an object in the museum. Here's an image of the object, and you have the ability to put up to 3 different images in here. There's buttons having to do with the object, but they're of these container fields, but they're not useful because the container field isn't filled in. Another point, it's not obvious here, but there's a lot of redundancy with the fields that are in this tab control. This one here is called section, and this one appears in almost every single tab here. So there's a lot of redundancy, and there's a lot of extra buttons and things that we don't need. Here's a redrawn layout for the same solution that we're now using for WebDirect. So in this new layout, I've made a couple of very simple changes which really have helped the WebDirect experience. The first thing is I updated all the headers, the labels for all the fields to de-emphasize the labels. And this has the added benefit of emphasizing the fields. Remember, for your users, a database is about the data, not about the structure. So this emphasizes the data in the database. I also hid buttons where it's appropriate. So if there's no image, you don't need a button to delete the image or to expand the image. There's buttons that are missing. And I also simplified some of the button names that are here. And I've taken the redundant fields. I've lowered the total number of layouts on the layout by taking redundant fields and put them all up in the heads-up display. And each one of these tab controls actually shows different information now. Now this layout is actually appropriate for WebDirect. It's also appropriate for the client. And just by luck, it's finally appropriate for an iPad. You can use the same layout for all 3 platforms. Now, and this refresh gives the entire database a sense of unity and consistency. So simple is always better. The next thing in your WebDirect solution is to try and avoid value lists. They're very, very useful. I'm not saying that they're not useful, but they're very easy to abuse. This is an example of a grant tracking application. In this specific example, we're adding organizations that want to participate in a grant. So here's a grant, and we're adding organizations right here. The thing about WebDirect is it will, a lot of times, it will take a bad or a questionable decision and amplifies the problem. So in this example, when I want to add a related record, the user just clicks into this name field, they get a value list, and they have to scroll down the value list to their to the appropriate selection. Well, this works fine if the value list is short, but as this list gets longer and longer, there's a number of problems that begin to show themselves. First is this, the value list will end up taking a couple of seconds to display since it's coming from a related table. The second problem is it's not very flexible. It only shows one value. It's not sortable unless it's sortable by alphabetical like this, that's all. In addition, finally, WebDirect doesn't support type ahead, so users have to use these little arrow keys to find exactly the selection that they want. And if you're looking for something way down at the bottom of the list, these little buttons get really annoying. There's no scroll bar like you have in Client. In a couple of moments, I'm going to show you an alternative way to present this user experience. And it's faster on WebDirect, and it's much more flexible. A common workaround for those value lists is a portal selector. This is an example from the invoices demo file that comes with FileMaker Pro. I'm not picking on FileMaker showing this. I've presented on this technique myself. I use it, I've implemented it a number of times. Here, the user clicks on a button, and in a popover, they get a portal of different things they can select. So in this case, I'm looking at an invoice, and I'm selecting a new customer for the invoice. And I get a portal, and there's even a search thing here. Again, this works great for small lists. It doesn't start to show any problems till you get a couple of thousand related records here. But it violates two of my rules for WebDirect. One, it adds a lot of objects to a layout, and it's not terribly flexible. It's hard to maintain. So what we're going to do is we're going to show a different technique that's going to alleviate both of these problems. And luckily, we can use it both for WebDirect and we can use it in Client. So this is our replacement workflow. Oh, this is just to remind you how easy it is to turn on WebDirect. It's just that one checkbox and poof, there it goes. Okay, so I'm going to hit the hide button. Boom. And we're going to go to, first things first, we're going to go to that same solution, which is the invoices solution, and we're going to go to it in WebDirect. I'm going to sign in. So here we are in WebDirect, and I'm going to show you, if we go to an invoice, and we're going to select the same button to show that portal popover. Now, when I do this in WebDirect, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4, 5 Mississippi, 6. Okay, it took about 6 or 7 seconds. That's the only time I'm going to make you guys wait, okay? So relax. It took 7 seconds to show this portal where I'm going to select something. Instead of doing that, what we're going to do is I'm going to use this selector tool. It's a little plus sign right here to select a new company. And what that does is it takes me to a new window. I'm no longer constrained with a portal. I have a window where I can filter things by company. Oh, let's see. I just want things that start with the letter B. Boom, there it goes. And I forgot to put sorting on here, but I can also sort this any way I want if I had sort buttons on here. You can't do that very easily in a portal. In addition, if I want to show more information than just the company name and the location, I can even put an info button here, which is a popover, which shows me even more information. And I can put some actions in here. So this is all very easy to maintain. And once I find the thing I want to select, I just hit this select button, and it will select the new company for me. So what this is doing is taking me to a completely different layout where I can make my selection. I'm going to change to Jessup. Actually, I have a close button. If I want to cancel, I don't want to bother changing anything, and it will take me back to where I am. This takes that whole function and moves it off into another layout. And then when I'm done with my job, I go back to my original layout. I'll show you how I put this together next. I'm going to open up the same solution a second time, and we're going to open it up in FileMaker Pro Client, Pro to Web. Okay, here we go. The fun thing about working with FileMaker and WebDirect is you have to, and it's a testament to FileMaker, you really have to pay attention to what application you're in while you're working with it, because you can get mixed up. So here we are in FileMaker, and I have the same button, and right now I'm on my invoice details layout, and this button uses the same script. If I'm using FileMaker Client, I have the ability to show that new window in a card window. This is a new in FileMaker 16. If you have users that are still using 15, you can give them exactly the presentation that you get in FileMaker in WebDirect. But it's the same presentation, and I can say close, and it just takes me back. So let's talk a little bit about how we put this guy together. You need two things. We need to have a layout, and we need a script. So let's just talk about the script first. And I've taken the entire action of customer selector, and I've put it into one script. And this way, it makes this function even more modular. This is something I think I've written about on our blog site, a style of programming I've started to do, which sort of groups things together as a functional unit. So there's a couple of different actions that this customer selector can do. One action is go to list, and what that is simply going to the new layout and setting some fields. And that's invoked. I'm going to go into layout mode here. So I'm in layout mode on our invoices table. And if I double click on our selector button, you see I'm doing the script customer selector with go to list. Yeah. So when you say go to list, it's making a new window. Now, if I'm on WebDirect, it literally just makes a new window, but it just shows that new window because you can't see the other window. And it can't do a card window when you're on WebDirect, so that's not compatible. It's essentially the same thing as just saying make a new window. And once I'm in the new window, there's only a few things that I can do. I'm going to go to that new window. It's company selector. We don't need this guy. So if we look carefully, there's only one button to select a company, a second button to cancel or to close this window, a third button to search, and a button to show all. And if I double click on each one of these buttons, they all call the same exact script, customer selector with the close parameter, customer selector with an action of select to select this guy, and search does it does, okay, I called it filter. And the show all, the other button here, does show all. So all the business of this tool is in the one script. So let's take a closer look at the script. When I invoke it, I go to this layout, and I'm just clearing my filters. And if I'm selecting something, then I grab the ID of the customer that I'm selecting, I close the window, and then I set the customer ID field on the invoice, which is, when you close the window, you're then left on your original layout, which is the invoice layout. And then the action filter will do a find based on what is filled in. So it will filter these things. And show all does exactly that. It clears out my filters and it shows all. And we can actually add something. Let's add something right on the fly. We're going to add a sort to sort by location. So I'm going to change. I'm going to add a line here. If this is sort by location, that's going to be my action. I'm going to grab that and I'm going to copy it onto the clipboard just so I have it in a minute. And if I sort by location, what do I want to do? I want to do a sort command, sort records without the dialog, and I'm going to sort by city and then state. And then I want to go to, I want to go to home. How do I do that? It's a window command. Scroll window. There you go. Scroll window to home. There. So now I'm going to take this button. I'm going to turn this guy into a button up at the top. And my button is going to be custom, my selector. And remember, I put on the clipboard my parameter, which is going to be sort by location. And since it's a button, I'm going to do that. And I can sort this just by clicking that. And it's all self-contained. And we can go into WebDirect now. Here's WebDirect. And I'm going to change the customer on this invoice. Let me relog in. And we'll go to our invoice. And let's filter everybody whose name is Mark. Got a bunch. And I'm going to sort them by location. And I can see most of my marks are all over the place. There's some in New York, some in New Jersey. This database has about 50,000 records of customers. And this I got from the Brian Dunning website, where you can just download sample data of people's names. So this technique bypasses the idea of adding layout objects, and it also gives you a lot more flexibility to sort and to filter your lists and to give users a lot more information to make a decision when they need to select something. Okay, let's go back to the formal presentation. There. One thing I just touched on briefly that you should be aware of is that WebDirect is a single window interface. Just like you remember, for the old folks in the audience, you remember kiosk mode? Very similar to that. You have a single window. if you have a script that opens multiple windows or card windows like we just did, then you need to add an appropriate widget to deal with that. 99% of the time, that's really just adding a close button. So in this example that we're looking at, this is a warehouse solution. The user clicks a button down here to look at some images, and it opens up a popover that has a portal. And when they click on one of these images, it opens up a new window in order to view it. Now, in the olden days, before instant web publishing, the users simply had to click the close button up here, and that would close this window. In WebDirect, you don't have a close option on a new window. It gives you this whole thing as a window. So to take care of that, you have to give them a close option. So if I view the same solution in WebDirect, and if I click on the image, this is what I get. See how the image has taken over the entire browser, and it's and I can't do anything. So I have to use this close button here that would close the window and take me back to where I started. Now, another thing I learned since implementing this example is you should be sensitive to the end users of your platform. So I built this on my Mac. 100% of the users of this particular solution are PC users. What I should have done is realized that on a PC, the close button is always on the right. But what I did is I followed the Mac convention, and I put the close button all the way over there on the left. That created just a small bit of traction, or friction, pardon me, with the end users. I think one thing I'm going to do, and I just realized this, actually, to be honest, putting this together, is I'm going to get a little fancy here, and I'm going to put two close buttons, one on the left and one on the right. And there's a simple function you can use to get the application platform. If it's a Mac, I'll show the left close button. If it's a PC, I can show the right close button. This reduces the friction between you and the end user to put the tool where you expect to see it. So I think that would probably be a good idea. Now, a common trope I like to tell my clients when I'm talking about databases is that every database has three parts. There's entering data, manipulating your data, and then outputting your data. WebDirect, we've already learned, does a fantastic job at letting users enter data and letting them manipulate the data. The glaring hole has always been output. The problem is WebDirect doesn't support preview mode, and it didn't allow for the creation of PDFs. Luckily, FileMaker Server 16 introduced a solution that has largely solved all of those problems, or that problem. And the benefits that you'll probably get is it's a little faster to make your PDFs on the server, and also it'll be more consistent. You don't have to worry about end users creating their own PDFs, and because everything will happen on the server, and you can have all the fonts installed and all that. Typically, when you're printing something to a PDF on the client, you save it to a temporary folder, and then you'll insert it into a field to use it later. Another problem is with WebDirect, you don't have access to local directories, so you can't save a PDF to a temporary folder. So the solution for that is to make all your PDFs on the server using perform script on server. Okay, so it's a second demo time. We're going to talk about how to make PDFs on a server. And we're going to open up our Pro to Web solution. I will make this available on the website after the talk today, so you don't need to take screenshots to grab all the scripting. So let's go to one of our invoices. Here we go. So this is an invoice and we've put a couple of line items on our invoice. Now here, there's a couple of different ways to handle PDFs in FileMaker 16 on WebDirect. The first one is simply create a PDF and save it to your desktop. The reason I'm presenting 3 different solutions is depending on your particular situation and what your users want, you might do one thing or another. So choices are always good. So here we go. We're going to save a PDF. The browser says our files are ready to be downloaded. Now remember, I told you I don't have access, pardon me, WebDirect doesn't have access to your file directory. So I have to, every time, say download it. And it downloaded the file to my downloads directory, and it opened it for me. So here I have, and it opened it in Preview or Acrobat, whatever you happen to have. And it opens it in a separate window. So it's actually on my computer, so that's a good thing. And then I have to close this window. So it's a couple-step process. Second solution would be something like this, where I'm going to, instead of save the PDF, I'm actually going to, I'm using air quotes, print the PDF. So when you use this button, you get this dialog box, which you can't really suppress. And I'm going to view as PDF, and I view it. Now what happens here is it opens a PDF in a new tab right over here. And I'm still in my browser. And it's the same beautiful PDF. And I can use my computer tools in order to save it if I want to. There, that saved it. Or I can use this to do something else, or I can zoom in and out. So those is saving a PDF and printing. The third option, which for me has been way more valuable, is to take a PDF and actually save the PDF in a container for later, or to email it, or to do whatever you want. So here, I can click a button and it's done. So this has the benefit of having the least number of clicks. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't get any other dialog boxes or clicks in the way. And that could be automated inside another script. And that's the container field that has my PDF. And I can download it to view it. Oh, I'm sorry. I can view it in the container field, in an interactive container field. See, I'm still inside FileMaker. And I have my close button here because it's a single window interface. And that takes me back to where I started from. So those are 3 different ways that we can create a PDF. How do I do that? I'll show you. So here we are in FileMaker now. And let's close this. Oops. Open up that guy again. Okay, so I go to my invoices layout. Here we go. And those are my, my 3 choices. So we're going to go into layout mode. Now the 3 buttons, actually this time, because they're totally different, I use 3 different scripts. So the first one, save as PDF, it does save invoice PDF script. So this is the one that actually saves it to my downloads directory. So first thing I have to do, in all of these, you start in the same way. I'm on the invoice layout. First thing I need to do is go to my print layout. And then all I'm doing is doing the save records as PDF. and I'm defaulting it to records being browsed, and then going back to where I started from. So save records as PDF. Basically, even if I tell it an output file, WebDirect won't support a location at this point. I always have to tell it where to save it. The second button here, what I called just the regular print button, was equally simple. I called the print command. And in WebDirect, when you call the print command, what it does is it just shows you a PDF in another tab. Actually, pretty simple. But then it's up to the user to download it and use it to do something else. That's the problem with that. It's sort of problem and feature. It's open-ended. You can do what you want with it. So the third one, print to container, it's like the three little pigs. I'm sorry. The third button is print to container. And it is deceptively short, because what it does is all the business is perform script on server. And then I just refresh the container field on the layout. And I just tell the user it's done. So it's really a one-line script where I'm saying save PDF to container. People that have seen my earlier podcasts will know that I like to name my scripts with a description so I know exactly what they do. This script is meant to be done as a perform script on server. That's why it says PSOS there. And the parameter is, what invoice am I making? So let's look at the perform script on server part of this script. It does a couple of things. First thing you do is you grab the invoice that you're sitting on. While I was testing, I had the invoice ID, test it before it goes on server. But you can see that's commented out there. So grab the ID. I set a variable, which is the path of the file that we're going to create, the path and the file name. So in this case, it's get temporary path, the ID of the invoice, and with the and append it with PDF. I have to set a second variable here. This is the magic sauce. And the second variable is a file URL, which is simply tells you what kind of data stream I'm looking at. So it's file : / and that goes in front of the previous variable. So this stuff was all sort of like set up. So what we're going to do is go to that same layout and find the appropriate records. And then we're going to save the records as PDF. And if I go up server, see, this is a server compatible script now in FileMaker 16. So I'm saving it to my temporary directory file, which is line 3 up here. Those numbers are so awesome. And I have some error trapping for while I was testing it. So I write to a variable, I call E, and save as PDF, and I append that with get last error. Now I go back to the invoices layout, and I go back to the invoice that is in question. That's what this perform find is. This one is the magic sauce, where I insert from URL into my container field, and the location of the thing that I'm inserting is file URL. And then I'm doing some error trapping here. So what I'm doing is I'm appending insert from URL with any error. And then I exit out. So the caveat here is when you insert from URL, it's one of those special script steps that has the word insert. So that means the field that you're acting on, in this case, the container field, has to be accessible. So it has to be on the layout that you're on. So that's why invoice details, I'm going back to this layout. Invoice details is this guy here, and that's why I put it right there. Now, in real life, I would probably make a developer layout that it only has that one field that I only use for doing this. That way, I don't have to junk up my layout with extra things. But for this demo and for many instances, this is fine. So the caveat is make sure that that field is accessible. And then we exit the script. A good practice is always to exit your scripts when they're perform script on server. And I'm exiting with some kind of a result, which is going to be my error trail. So let's go back to the script that called this guy, which is print to container. Save. Okay. So in print to container, after I call this guy, I'm checking that the result is actually 0. My script result is 0. And if it's 0, I just say done. Otherwise, I tell the user that it's something else. So this way, I can create the PDF and insert it into the container field. Okay, let's go back to where we started. So here's a couple of other things that I'd like you to keep in mind when you're developing your WebDirect solution. You can use the send mail script step, but you can't do it without a dialog box. It will have to show the end user it will open up your email client. Also, you can't attach files. If you want to attach files, then you should be using perform script on server. And if you want to send an email without user intervention, perform script on server. Also, rich text formatting is not supported. So if you want to give your users an interface where they can write an email, and in FileMaker client, you can right-click on a word and make it bold. You can't do that in WebDirect. Sorry. Another thing to keep in mind when you're using WebDirect, your beautiful custom menus that you've done in your WebDirect client, like here's a nice example. This is a layout for creating users. So I've hijacked the new and the delete button to create a new user and to inactivate a user instead of deleting a user account. In WebDirect, you do not get custom menus. So I left the tooltip here to show you this is the same layout in WebDirect. So these buttons don't do the custom menu. They will literally only create a new record and delete the current record. So if you're using custom menus, you need to always hide your menus. And what I do in my WebDirect solution is you have to essentially duplicate all the functionality up here. Like instead of a new button, you're using a new account. So this toolbar would typically be hidden. I'm just showing it there for illustration for you. So custom menus, sorry, they don't work yet. Another thing to keep in mind is autocomplete. That is not supported in WebDirect. So autocomplete is this thing. I'm showing you layout mode right now, where this field item is an edit box, but I'm auto-completing using existing values. So in FileMaker client, if I type in a new item and I type the letter G, for example, I get this beautiful value list of everything that starts with G. And that can help your user if that's a useful thing. In WebDirect, this is the same layout. In WebDirect, I type the letter G, and I don't get that value list. And I'm showing you it's WebDirect. There's my my browser. So you can't use autocomplete, but all is not lost. Here's some other final thoughts about WebDirect. It's very similar to old school development in that it's a single window, and it's also so it's a lot of the tools that you learned in FileMaker years and years ago are applicable once again. It's very similar to other platforms where, like in .NET, where you have one environment for your programming, you save your file, and then you go to something else in order to view the database. So in that respect, it's sort of neat. It's sort of seeing how the other side lives. Updating is across the board. So this is a positive and a negative. So in FileMaker Client, when a new version of FileMaker comes out, you can deploy it slowly and make sure your solution works, with a trusted group of people. And then once you know the next version of FileMaker is good, deploy it to everybody. In WebDirect, you update the server, and that updates everybody with a new backend. So that's a little scary, but on the other side, you don't have the pain of actually having to update everyone's computer. And with the addition of PDFs, I really feel, and the number of users, WebDirect is really a great alternative for a complete deployment. There are still some features we'd love to see in the future. Multiple window support. I've talked about all of these already. Offline updating, custom menu support, and RTF support. So here's my checklist of things that you should keep in mind. Single window interface. Don't use long value lists. Don't rely on custom menus. Some things I didn't have time to talk about. On layout keystroke triggers, those things won't work. And also tabbing into a button and then selecting the button with a return. That also does. Oh, I have that listed here. I thought I didn't write it in there. That's a nuance that won't work. Autofill from index and layering objects. On the positive side, your portals and sorting tend to be much faster in WebDirect because there's less communication between the client and the server, because it's all in WebDirect, it's happening between the server and the web server. And whenever you're building either your WebDirect or your FileMaker client solutions, always build to the lowest common denominator, the smallest screen, the slowest computer, that kind of thing. And that's the whole ball of wax, kids.
Let's switch to speaker. Yeah, so we have a bunch of questions. By the way, we're about a minute past our scheduled time, so if everyone can stick around, that's great. If you need to hop off for any reason, no hurt feelings, but we are going to try to get through some of these questions, or as many as we possibly can. So we'll hit the questions board. So the first is, I'd love to use this for customer access. However, the cost is significant. Yeah, WebDirect, I guess concurrent connections are expensive. One thing I would try to explore in that case is to see if you can fit into a FileMaker licensing for Teams scenario. And so that is named users as opposed to anonymous users the way concurrency works, but still it's exceedingly affordable if it's a client portal where well, I'm only going to have these 10 visitors, these 10 named visitors, so they're going to be part of my FileMaker licensing for Teams, and I'll extend my WebDirect portal out to them. So just a thought. This was a question, what is the problem with valueless? I think we covered that, so that was
they're slow.
They're slow. Yeah, not that they're slow in Pro, they're slow in WebDirect. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like to use a single layout with multiple slider panels to keep the interface cleaner. How to best approach this with WebDirect?
Slider panels work great with WebDirect. Yeah. Actually, I could dig it out. I had a blog post about that. You can use slider panels with a button bar, and that's a really great way to control access to different things. So, and then you can use a button bar and you can separate it from the slider and use that to select different tabs in your slider. Okay.
How do you set themes for WebDirect applications? Your grant tracking app, how'd you get that nice styled theme for the layout?
Jeffrey, well, thank you. Yeah. You do themes exactly the same in FileMaker as in WebDirect. So if I go back to FileMaker, you go to the theme tool. So I'm in a layout right here, and you just select your themes. I typically like to use Enlighten Touch, or I like to use the touch themes because, to be honest, nobody's eyes are getting better. They're all getting worse, and these are all a little bit bigger. They're easier to read. But it's really just personal preference. You know, I have not seen in real life, in my hands, a big difference between a big bang for creating a lot of custom styles in your themes. I don't see in other words, I don't see a performance enhancement. Using styles in your themes is a good idea to keep things looking consistent, but it's, I don't see an improvement in performance. So that's how you change themes, just like FileMaker Client.
In your selector example, could you do type ahead instead of having to click the search button? I think the answer to that is no, you cannot do type ahead in WebDirect yet. Okay.
Yeah, it's clunky. Even in Client, I find that, you know, doing it on Modify is clunky.
Okay. FileMaker, will you talk a bit about FileMaker Go? Does it work with FMP WebDirect on an iPad, which is better, Go or Safari?
I think Go is better, and I think Safari on an iPad is not supported. You're supposed to use FileMaker Go on an iPad. Okay. Yeah.
Do you need FMP Advanced to program for WebDirect, or is FMP regular fine? What do you need Advanced for?
Oh, that's an excellent. That's a
big question.
Big question. You basically, you can do it all in Pro. Advanced gives you some tools for scripting. So you get this menu here, so you get a script debugger where you can step through things, and you get a data viewer, so you can create calculations in the data viewer without having to put them on the layout. But in terms of WebDirect development, you don't need it for that.
Okay. Currently using FileMaker Server 14 and considering WebDirect for multiple offsite users for a single file. IT group would like to use OKTA. Can this work? We don't know what that is.
It depends what OKTA is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is that like a form of authentication or something? The answer is probably not. That it would be one of the supported OAuth providers and not a third-party OAuth provider. But yeah, honestly, I don't know that we know that. Can you quantify what you mean by a long value list? Good question. Yes. What is a big value list, Jared?
I would say something more than 100 or 1,000 qualifies for long. Just as a, you know, your mileage will vary.
Does WebDirect support SVGs?
Yes, absolutely. All of these. Yes is the answer. If you go into these little icons here, these are SVGs. And there's a couple of really nice websites you can go to and FileMaker demo solutions that have really nice SVGs that you can import. Okay, cool.
Somebody is asking the blog address. It is FileMakerAcademy.com. FMAcademy's address is FileMakerAcademy.com. Somebody else owns FMAcademy. They probably teach you how to do radio DJing.
Yeah,
is what I would imagine. How is WebDirect when working with mobile Chrome for Android users? So it's supported, right?
It's supported,
yes,
totally.
Exactly, yeah. A specific build of Android, I guess, or later.
Yeah, I think it's 45 or more.
Connect to Android, yep. Will we do a webinar about OAuth sometime, please? Yeah.
Thank you
for that. That's actually a really good idea. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. No, seriously, I'm writing that one down because I think that one of the members actually is fairly expert at that, so that would be good. That's. I think that's it for the questions, and then multiple questions about the recording and the sample file post-webinar blog post. We will get to that as soon as possible, but please check back on FileMakerAcademy.com under the past webinars. This will be the first one under past webinars, and we will try to get that up as soon as possible. Thanks very much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Sorry we went long, and thank you for hanging in there.